So chops and lifts are a great exercise, and we've been talking about chops and lifts for quite a few years now. But here's some few things you got to consider when doing this exercise. Most importantly, get your setup correct. Now you notice I've got about a 4-inch width base here, so putting a little board or something between me allows me to be consistent with my setup to start. Now I want my knee over my ankle, so create 90 degrees here. Okay, again, this is just a start. We can change up the position as we progress. The other thing is making sure the knee is under the hip, which is under the shoulder, which is under my ear. You don't want to have the person back too far. Even when they go into chopping, you'll see a person go in and they'll be leaning forward and bending the spine, but flexing that hip, feeding in to a hip flexor that's helping them do this. The goal here is to create stability. Static stability. I want to keep everything quiet up here, okay? So I want to keep that hip tucked under, everything up nice and tall, and I should feel a little stretch here in my quad when I'm doing this correctly. So getting myself here, so when I do my chops, I'm not forcing them going into flexion. The other thing is here, don't go into too much extension, same thing. So I feel a lot more comfortable in this position, but now I'm not creating stability in my hip. I'm kind of hanging out on my spine. We don't want to see that either. The last thing, point that back toe. Now, in some situations, you want to tuck the toe under. When I tuck the toe under, I'm actually creating stability using my foot. Well, if the goal for the chop or lift exercise is to create more proximal stability, stability in the core, stability in the hip, which is where we may want to start, I'm going to point that back toe. Now also, this board here can help me get some feedback because I don't want that foot too far rotated out or in. So get it right in line with everything else. So I'm using my board here to help me do that. Over my base of support, knee angle's good. If I want to regress, I widen the base out. I want to progress, then I narrow the base, okay? So this should always remain stable. Always remain stable here. Don't go into flexion, don't go into extension. Now, when we go and perform the exercise, how do we know whether to do a half kneeling exercise or a tall kneeling chop or lift? So if I'm doing a tall kneeling, got a wide base support, hips in line with my shoulders, toes tucked. Now I can do the same thing in a tall kneeling position. Half kneeling or tall kneeling, you know what? Our movement screen should help direct us to which one I need to do. So if I've got a good squat, me personally, I squat pretty well. However, I have an asymmetry in lunging. So if I have an asymmetry in lunging, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna do a chop. But if my lunges are good, but my squat is poor or not great, I'm going to focus on tall kneeling activities. So the screen can help direct the decision we make during our exercise programming. It may not be necessarily a corrective exercise, but it can help reinforce what I do in my corrective exercises. Now, what's another common mistake in chopping and lifting? Is that people really go wide, and when they go wide, instead of a pull and a push, or a pull and a press, which is functional, that's how we need to operate, functional. Where you see a lot of people just do it wide base, or just do it this way because they think because they're doing it this way, they're creating a little bit more torque in the system, which forces them to work the body a little bit better. It doesn't necessarily do that. Actually, it may cause you to make mistakes, and that's not necessarily functional. If I'm going to take an object from a high point and push it on the ground or place it on the ground, if something is heavy up here, I'm gonna pull it in and I'm gonna lay it or push it to the ground. I'm not gonna pull it, take it here and lower it down this way. Again, it causes you to open up that hip, creates a little torque on the spine. We don't necessarily wanna do that. If you're gonna progress to that, then you wanna move those hips and do some different types of motion or mechanics with that idea. I'm doing this right now, half kneeling, to really create stability in this downside leg. A couple other things I want you to consider. When you're doing chops to start, talked about the setup, now let's talk about the angle from the point of resistance. So we got 45-degree angle is kind of where we want to start. So if I look at this being kind of parallel and this being all the way away, halfway point between those two. So that 90-degree angle being this way, parallel being here, find the halfway point, and this will be where we start in our half kneeling chops or tall kneeling chops. Now let's think about this. There's another couple other angles we could go into. If I angle myself further away. Now I'm coming over top and still doing a chop. Still have the same base of support, everything's the same. But now, because it's coming over my shoulder, what's that resistance doing? Pulling me to extension. What's the automatic response to being pulled into extension? I engage my core a little bit better, the anterior structures. So if you want to work the anterior structures a little bit more, angle yourself further away. Still do the pull and the press. The other thing is making sure you're chopping to the down knee. So I want to chop to the knee that is down. I don't necessarily want to chop to the knee that is up, because now that's not necessarily a functional activity that I want to do in a half kneeling position. Now, if I angle myself more towards point of resistance, now it's pulling me forward. So now what am I going to have to engage a little bit more? Posterior structures. So depending upon what you're trying to accomplish, put the person in that angle. So facing more towards it, it's pulling you forward, pulling you anterior. You're going to have to engage a little bit more posterior. Moving more away, pulling you posterior, you're going to have to stabilize a little bit more anteriorly. Now, the other thing you can do is change up your grip. So if I want to work the upper body a little bit more, I'm going to get myself in a good base of support. Now I'm going to have my hands here together, and I'm going to pull them and push them. Now I'm working more D1, D2. Okay, so now that's create a little bit more functional with the upper body. So if I'm working with an individual, I want to work the upper body a little bit more. I will not do a wide grip. Wide grip's more for stability, core stabilization. The hands are more for P&F patterning, kind of that feed or push activity we do, which is a natural thing we do with our upper body. So if you want to work the hand, the grip, the elbow, the shoulder, put your hands together and do this. If you want to work the core a little bit more, put your hands together and do this. Now the lift is going to be the same exact process. Everything remains the same, but now the downside knee is going to be where we would go, and we would just work the same pattern. Now it's a pull to a press. Base of support remains the same. Make your choices on whether you're doing tall kneeling or half kneeling based off the screen that you just did. So lift to the up knee, chop to the down knee, pick your base of support off the screen, and then angle your body based off what you're trying to accomplish. So now that we've gone over chops and lifts, check out this next video to keep you moving well and moving often.